Everyone, welcome back to Pine Hollow Auto Diagnostics. Guess what I just bought? 2005 Honda Accord V6, 200,000 miles. I just paid 500 bucks cash for this baby, and it drives absolutely fine. So let's get into it. I'll tell you how I got this thing and what we have to do to it and what I'm going to do with it in the long run. So about a month ago, this is before Christmas, one of my good customers, she owned the 2012 Ford Focus. Did a couple videos on that one. So unfortunately, on a cold rainy night, she was driving through an intersection, had the green light, and some old guy in a Cadillac decided to turn left in front of her. She didn't even have time to touch the brakes, basically T-boned that guy, and well, her Ford Focus, the insurance company, totaled it. Now that might be a blessing in disguise. It had that dual shift, notorious transmission that goes bad. So at 130,000 miles, I think she got cash for it. So she was in desperate need of a vehicle, and I had my 98 Toyota Camry V6 just sitting here. It's a loaner, spare car. And I told her, how about you take this thing and drive it while you search for another car. If you really love it, we can settle on a price and you can buy it off of me. Well, understandably, she and her dog really loved the smooth Camry V6, so they ended up buying it off of me. And I'm like, well, I don't really, it's nice to have a little more space on the lot, but it's nice to have a spare car for other people to borrow. Like in this case, it worked out perfectly, but now I'm one vehicle short. A couple days later, literally after I just sold the Camry, another one of my customers said, hey, are you interested in buying my old Honda Accord for parts? And I'm like, oh geez, what's wrong with it? He's like, well, it just failed inspection and I'm looking to upgrade anyway, so I want to get rid of this thing. I'm like, okay, what did it fail for? He said brakes and some rust. Well, I mean, it looks pretty nice, except for these corners here on the fenders. Okay, you got a little rust hole there, and in Pennsylvania, technically that's a fail. So I'm like, holy crap, you really just want to get rid of this thing for scrap value because, of a little rust hole? I told him, like, we can patch it up, you can get another few years out of it. He's like, no, I just want to get rid of it. So I got this thing for 500 bucks. I wasn't going to offer him 200 because, I mean, it's a nice car. It drives perfectly fine. 3-liter V6 VTEC, 240 horses, doesn't burn any oil. It's been maintained fairly well, and it doesn't have that cylinder deactivation crap. So this is a solid powertrain. Yeah, it's automatic, but it shifts fine, it drives fine. So it's ready to go. It needs an oil change, and I had to put a used battery in here just to, the battery was dead. It was sitting for about a month in his garage. But that's it. So now we have a Honda Accord V6 on the lot as the spare beater loaner. You can see the wheels are a little different. He said he bought it that way 5 years ago. Never really worried about it. So that's it. So I want to go over this thing with a fine-tooth comb, change out any old fluids, oil, transmission, clean out the interior, and make this thing drivable and reliable and perfect. So just in case, if anybody, any one of my customers needs to borrow a vehicle, this will be here and it'll be good to go. So let's make a checklist and go from there. Well, I'm checking the car over, looking at the spare tire. Oh man, we got a pool of water. You see the water level? The tire is halfway submerged. So definitely some water intrusion in the trunk. And where is it coming from? Well, this whole channel was full of leaves and debris and mud. So I don't know if the water was spilling over this seam. You can see it seals right here, potentially. Or it could be coming in somewhere else. But we have to drain that out. I don't want to haul around a pool of water back here. Wow. Hopefully we can find a drain. Get one of these suckers out. There we go. Drain the swamp. All right. Wow. That's some nice flow. Amazing. So wrapping up the oil change on the Accord V6. We're going to put in some Mobil 1 5W20 full synthetic 4.5 quarts. And you can see here there's a little oil leak going on from the valve cover gasket, and that's getting onto the exhaust manifold or the cat, and I could smell it inside, but again, we'll just keep an eye on that. This is a very budget loaner beater, so we're just doing the basic maintenance on it, and I don't know, letting it sit in the lot. I'm really not planning on driving this thing too much. Alright, so transmission fluid is up next. I got 4 quarts of ATF DW1 in stock, and the dipstick is right here, but you fill it through a separate hole. I took out the fill plug right there, and the drain plug looks to be very, very stuck. I don't think it's ever been off in the life of this car, so we might see some very nasty transmission fluid. So I got a 1/2 inch ratchet with a 1/4 or a 3/8 inch adapter. Oh, and it's loose. Nice, that worked. Let's pour out the old fluid here. Obviously it's very, very dark. So drain and refill, they say about 3 quarts. So we'll measure this and then put in the same amount. It was full in the dipstick to begin with. And the magnet does have a good layer of stuff on it, but I think for 200,000 miles, that's, I can say that's normal. And it's nice that they have a magnet, so the stuff doesn't keep circulating through everything in the transmission. Wipe that off nicely. Let's pop it back in, refill it. And check it out, 3 quarts on the money. Let's dump some back in. So the brand new fluid looks so nice, like a red color, not a black color. So I'm pretty sure the owner never changes automatic transmission fluid. Hopefully it'll shift fine with the new fluid. There's always a chance that you dump out all the old particles in the old fluid and then it'll start slipping, but I've never actually had that happen. And I always keep the old fluid until we verify that it drives fine with the new fluid. Now, Honda is one vehicle where you check the transmission fluid level with the engine off, which is actually convenient, and right there, right next to the full mark. So we're good. We're done with the transmission fluid change. taking a peek at the timing belt. I think it looks perfectly fine. There are no H cracks or anything like that. So I'm going to leave that alone too. So don't care about the oil leak, don't care about timing belt. I think that's pretty much it for drivability. You could use a little front end alignment, maybe a sway bar link, but just minor stuff. And I did get rotors and pads because when you stop it, the wheel vibrates quite a bit and the pads are low. So we'll put those on. Alright, next up, I noticed that none of the dome lights work. That doesn't work. This doesn't work. The courtesy light does work. And there's one in the back. Also, nothing. So is it bulbs or is there a fuse? Let me see if there's a fuse. If that's good, we'll replace the bulbs. Well, that's interesting. The vanity lights do work on the mirrors. Let's see if they're on the same fuse. Alright, here's the wiring diagram for the EX ambient light ceiling light, fuse 6 7.5 amp. So here we go, front passenger vanity mirror light and driver's mirror light. These work, nothing else does. So perhaps we just need a whole bunch of bulbs. Let's take one out and replace it and see if they come back to life. Alright, we got illumination, so I'm going to install LED lights just because they don't drain the battery well or as much, and they provide more light, which is a win-win. So I put in the second light, and you can manually turn it on, but with the door, only this one works. Oh, switch problem. There we go. Now they both work with door. Sweet. Ran out of LED bulbs, so that one's gonna get an old school incandescent. So all the dome lights now work. Sweet. Alright, taking the cord for a little spinner on the block. Shifts really nicely with that new transmission fluid. Just a couple things left to perfect. Has a little exhaust heat shield rattle. Got to get rid of this seat belt buzzer. You know, that's a little inconvenient. Front rotors and pads. You do that. Clean out this interior and deal with the water leak in the trunk. I mean, you just leave the drain plug out. It's not a huge deal there. But yeah, otherwise this car is happy. Seat heater seems to work fine. I got it on high. I would say it's drivable as is right now. I mean, this thing pulls good up the hill. Yeah, very smooth. So we'll keep going. Time to do the front brakes on the 2005 Accord. And it's putting up a little fight. I have to drill out the rotor bolts. Upper caliper pin is quite seized up. I mean, it's got it moving a little bit, but it sure doesn't want to come out yet. So we're going to gently force it out. Pretty clean. Lube it up, reinstall it, should be good to go. So let's put a little silicone paste on the pin. I clean the hole out. There we go. Perfect. I say this one's still fine. Rotor's loose. Let's pop the bracket off. Let's bust these out. Sweet. A little corroded, little short bolts. All right. Alright, so the 2005 Accord V6 is almost ready for prime time. I want to do a couple more things just to, you know, because they bother me a little bit. The mismatched wheels. I got a used one on eBay. That's the 7-spoke. We're going to get 2 new tires, put them up front, and put the 2 better used ones in the back. And this oil leak, I actually got a set of valve cover gaskets. I was going to do that, and like, well, wait a minute. Let me take a closer look. The rear valve cover is bone dry, absolutely perfect. The front one is kind of grimy, and you can see the oil leak is worse over here, not over here. I don't see any drips here, but look right here. You'll see kind of clean spots where the oil is actually flowing, and it's not flowing from the valve cover. It's flowing from this plug. It's, I don't know what its purpose in life is here. Maybe some kind of oil passage or cam sensor or something that is not used on this model. But I think there's an O-ring that's just leaking. You can see that those clean spots where it's really wet. And then from there it just goes everywhere. It drips onto the exhaust. It kind of smokes right here. So let's pop this out, clean everything up, and see if that is our culprit. Alright, so I got this thing out. What the heck is it? It looks like it has some kind of purpose. It has holes drilled into it. Guys, I think this is the PCV valve, because there's a hose right here. This thing sits in here, and that goes right to the intake manifold. Okay, that makes sense. Let's get this thing cleaned up. That O-ring is shot, and yeah, we'll at least stop this leak and see if the smoking goes away. Well, I was trying to clean this thing off, and tip snapped off. You can see there is like a one-way little plunger in there. I think we need a new one of these because it's so dry and brittle and plastic that if this snaps off, that'll be a pain in the butt to get out of the valve cover. So let me see if I can get one. Replacement PCV valve. Standard motor product. Yep, it's made in China, but for this thing, I don't care. It costs about the same as the OEM, just more convenient to have it shipped here in 20 minutes. So let's pop this sucker in. That should fix the oil leak and take this thing in a test drive. Alright, so the 2005 Honda Accord V6 is ready for prime time. I don't know what else to do with it to make it perfect, so let's go over the list and take it for one last drive before I put it in the back lot for hibernation. Yeah, it turned out pretty nice. Alright, so the only things I had to do to this car to make it perfectly roadworthy, let's start under the hood. Obviously did an oil and filter change, transmission fluid change. The original battery that the owner had in here came back to life, so I just put that back in. No parts required there. And I had an annoying oil leak up here from that PCV valve O-ring. It's completely healed. It's not a valve cover gasket. There's no more oil leak or burning smell, so I'm really happy with that. And then I had a little heat shield rattle. I put 2 hose clamps at the bottom of the catch to hold the heat shields in place. Now it's butter smooth, no more rattle, so that's all I had to do to the drivetrain. On the exterior, installed new front brakes, rotors and pads. It stops on a dime, no more vibrations. I did purchase 2 new tires, put those on the front, and put the front wheels on the back, because the rear tires were really old and didn't grip very well. And then I went on eBay and bought a matching alloy wheel, because having 2 mismatched wheels was a little ghetto. But this one was apparently from the south. It looks absolutely mint compared to the original wheels, which are a little salty and corroded. So that's awesome. Drives like $1,000,000. And then in the trunk here, we had that giant pool of water, and I've been monitoring it, and I haven't seen any water intrusion since I got it. We had some rain, some freezing rain. It stayed dry in here. Once I dried it out, not a drop. But I'm still going to leave that plug halfway undone just in case we get another pool. And I put the mismatched alloy wheel here as a spare tire instead of that silly donut. So it eats up a little bit of cargo room, but covers it nicely. So that's it for the exterior. We can clean the windows, but that's it. I also got some classic plates for it. In Pennsylvania, if your car is 15 years old or older, you can get classic plates, or 25 years old for antique. So with classic plates, the only stipulation is you can't use it as a daily driver, which this isn't, and the registration's permanent, so you don't have to renew that every year, waste money on that, and it doesn't need any emissions inspections, which this car doesn't even have a check engine light. Everything works great, so that's not even an issue. Then the interior, I spent about an hour just vacuuming everything out. It was kind of filthy. It looks basically brand new now. What do we have to do? We put in some LED bulbs for the dome lights, and then everything works. That one works, and a couple bulbs for the illumination switches. So unfortunately this car is leather, which I really dislike. I love cloth interiors because leather is cold in the winter, hot in the summer. It cracks with age. It's slippery. I don't see any positives for leather, except for maybe if you spill something on it, it's a little easier to clean up. But then the seat heaters, again, replaced a couple of bulbs. So the driver's one, it works, but even on high, it doesn't really get toasty. It's like lukewarm, so the seat heaters are weak sauce in this car. And the passenger's heater, it only works in the high position because the seat back element, there's no continuity, so it'll just warm up the cushion, which is better than nothing, but that's kind of a, not ideal. So let's take this thing on a spin, make sure it's perfect, and yeah, I mean, for 500 bucks, this is a pretty nice little project. So as you can hear, going over these bumps on the lane, suspension does knock a little bit, but I couldn't find anything drastically loose. It's not a sway bar or a ball joint or anything like that. Maybe the shocks are a little worn. Again, I don't care. This is not my primary vehicle, so it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be reliable and roadworthy. Definitely not as smooth as my 98 Toyota Camry V6 was. That thing was butter smooth. I mean, like Oldsmobile smooth, but it actually handled pretty nicely. The Mystique is a lot smoother than this car in terms of suspension. So I guess Honda went more for a sporty feel, but for a family sedan, that kind of doesn't really make sense. But again, it's perfectly fine. It's just a little rough on the bumps. Alright, let's do a little acceleration, make sure there's no rattles or bad noises, and it shifts good. Now this is where this car gets a little fun. I mean, it pulls and it shifts nice and crisp. You can just cruise on the highway all day long with no effort. So that's what this car is made for. Now the Honda V6 transmissions from the early 2000s had a bad rap. I don't know, this one chefs perfectly fine, so I don't know if it's gonna blow tomorrow. I hope not. But maybe by 2005 they made some improvements to it. I have no idea. So that's, I guess, the only weak spot in the drivetrain on these cars. That's a known issue. But otherwise, I mean, it drives like $1 million. Has great sound. Cruise control works perfectly. What more can you ask for? One more thing that I modified on the Accord is I got rid of a couple of the annoying dingers. Seatbelt warning and the key in reminder. Those are off, so the only time it dings now is if you leave your lights on and you open the door. That's it. That's the only useful dinger on any car. That's the one I leave enabled. Fuel economy on this car, I used up half a tank, filled it up. It was less than 18 miles per gallon. Now granted, a lot of cold starts, just pulling it in the shop, doing a short test drive, okay. And then if you have the V6, you want to mash it sometimes and feel that smooth power, so not too surprising. But you know, in that regard, V6 is a V6. The engine is 1.5 times bigger than the Mercury Mystique there, that even if you drive the Mystique hard, you'll still get pretty close to 30 miles per gallon. This one will be closer to 20. So, you know, can't really argue with reality. But I think on the highway, this one's supposed to get close to 32, which is really nice. Now, last thing I want to do is compare two $500 cars. This one and the 96 Mercury Mystique. What are the pluses and minuses? In my opinion, which one I would keep as a daily driver, you can probably guess the answer. So in terms of a daily driver, personally, I can't not have a manual transmission. If you want a driver's enthusiast car, manual is the only way to go. I've test driven a Tesla. You can get to 60 miles an hour in 3 seconds, but that was only fun for about 5 minutes. It's like a roller coaster. Did the ride, move on with life. If you're going to drive a car every day, you want to enjoy your experience behind the wheel. And for me personally, I want to shift my own gears and either drive it relaxed or drive it sporty, whatever the mood is. With an automatic, like this car really means nothing to me. It's just a generic car. Yeah, it has the nicer, more powerful engine, it's smooth, but you know, driving enjoyment, whatever, it'll get you there. But yeah, nothing beats a manual transmission. And if you don't know how to drive a manual, I'd say you can't really consider yourself a real car enthusiast. That's just my personal opinion. So obviously I would keep the Mystique as a daily. The only thing that one doesn't have, which is kind of a pain, is power locks and power windows. That's all manual. This one has, you know, all the power stuff and keyless entry, which is nice. It is nice, but that's not personally a deal breaker. So in conclusion, this 2005 Honda Accord V6, it's ready for the road. You know, $500 initial price. I probably invested another $500 in parts, 2 tires, brakes, rotors and pads, and some light bulbs, and a wheel rim. Okay, that's it. So I think that's the deal of the century there. That's less work than the Mystique needed to get perfect. That one needed a clutch. That was kind of a pain in the ass job. It needed a rear subframe because that rotted out. Coil springs, you know, other little odds and ends. But once I got that car perfected, it hasn't needed anything. I mean, it's a non-interference engine, so I don't care if the timing belt snaps. I haven't touched it in 8 years. Has well over 300,000 miles on it. And manual transmission, you know, if it's gone that far, I think it'll keep going. With this automatic, I don't know how long it's going to last. It might last a while longer if you don't boost it too much. So this $500 car is now a nice $1,000 car with a couple little rusty spots. So I think that's it. Hope you enjoyed that, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye. And the last thing about this car that's slightly annoying, especially for a car that's going to sit a lot, is it has that 30 milliamp parasitic drain. So off camera, I actually went through the procedure to track it down, and it's just a Honda thing. I've seen several Hondas with this 30 milliamp drain. The audio or the radio is 5 amps. If you unplug the backup fuse, it goes down to 7 milliamps. So 7 milliamps for other things in the car that, you know, when it's asleep, plus 5 amps or 5 milliamps for the radio, plus 2 milliamps for the power window, you know, memory switch, plus the body control module draws about 15 milliamps, a little less than that. So total of 30 milliamps all the time. I mean, come on, Honda. Do you really need to do that? So if this car sits for more than a week, I'm just gonna have to unhook the negative battery cable. Not a big deal. It just resets the clock. That's it. So a little follow up on the parasitic draw on this 2005 Honda Accord V6. So doing another measurement, I locked the car with the key fob, so the security system is set. I also latched the trunk. This is basically how the car is supposed to be parked. And it's averaging around 15 milliamps versus 28, which is, you know, an improvement. So this, I would say, is normal. You see the red light on the cluster is flashing there, and the red light on the stereo anti-theft is also flashing. So that security system is set. Now, let me unlock the car. And basically leave it like this, and I want to see what the parasitic draw goes to without locking the car, because usually I just leave it unlocked. Alright, so it's settled down to about 23 milliamps, about almost 10 milliamps more with the car unlocked versus with the car locked. Interesting. What if we pop the hood latch down here? Now it's down to that 28. So closing the hood lowers it by about 5 or 6 milliamps. And locking it with the fob lowers it by another 10 milliamps. So that's what you're going to find in these Hondas.